and welcome to Youth Voices in Ending Violence Against Women and Girls. In the last 3 months, there have been 97 recorded cases of femicide reported in various parts of the country. In honor of the 16 days of activism, we want to shed light on gender-based violence in Kenya and stand in solidarity with survivors whose lives have been affected by this injustice across our nation. Joining me is Grace Naserian, a youth advocate for Amref Health Africa in Kenya, and Emmanuel Barare, youth panel member from the Make Way Consortium, and they will give us insights into violence against women and girls and how it affects lives in Kenya. Okay, Grace, there is a rise in the number of cases of violence against women and girls, and this includes femicide, which is referred to as the most extreme form of violence against women. So can you explain to us what's femicide, and can you also share the situation in Kenya?
Thank you, Halima. So basically, femicide is the extreme manifestation of gender-based violence because at this point we are talking about life that has been lost as a result of gender-based violence. So in simple terms, that is basically what femicide is. And for Kenya, I think this is a sad state of affairs, seeing what is happening in our country. We've seen young girls losing their lives. And I think a big number of the girls that have lost their lives are young people. And that shows that there is something that is wrong in our country, and basically something needs to be done. And looking at the statistics by the National Bureau of Statistics, it shows that 34% of women have experienced violence as of age of 15 years old. So violence starts at an early age in Kenya. And that we are talking about a girl who is in their high school level education. So that is something that we really need to think through. And basically right now, given at the fact that we are a technologically advanced generation and even society, the statistics again shows that 90% of women, especially those who are in the tertiary institutions, have experienced I've experienced technologically engineered or facilitated gender-based violence, with 39% of them having personally experienced the gender-based violence. So there's a problem at the tertiary institutions, and looking at the number of women who have lost their lives, we've seen what is going in the happening in the social medias, the stories that have emerged, how some of them they've met with the other person through maybe Tinder or these social media dating sites, and they've ended up losing their lives. So I think that is something that we have to think through, and that is.
I 100% agree with you, because if the age of violence starts at 15, then it moves on to tertiary education spaces, then there's a problem, a history of violence, and it is perpetuated throughout society, and it's also then internalized. So a lot of women do not speak out, a lot of girls do not speak out, and also the technological forms of violence against women is horrific, because it might not be physical, but it's mental, and that can also cause a lot of mental health issues. And you're right, we need to address it. We need to actually have policies in place that help women and young girls get through, whether it's physical, whether it's virtual violence against them. And Emmanuel, how do you feel like societal norms and attitudes towards women contribute towards violence against women and girls? I know we've touched up on it a bit, but we'd also like your opinion.
I think society at large plays a huge role in. It's like a normalization of violence against women, and maybe it's because of the African culture. You might put it as that. Maybe it's because of the patriarchy, but society has, especially in our context, it has kind of normalized how any maybe perception of disrespect from a woman is supposed to be met with violence per se, or something like that, where any approach maybe if a man is approaching a woman and they get declined, it's a virtue of violence being met against them. And we see it all over social media with people being body shamed, people being bullied. It all starts from the very fabric of our society. Maybe it even starts at our homes, where young children experience their parents or the fathers having violence met against their moms. So I think this is something that is there, and it's embedded deep within the societal fabric, and it's something that I don't know. It's something we really need to start thinking critically about, so that we can have a solution towards it.
And you know what? You are right. I think partially it's a patriarchy, and also the fact that women have to act or behave a certain way to get respect.
Yeah.
And even at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. People will body shame you. Either you're too skinny or you're too fat. And it's just a way that they can like put you in a box and also kind of label you so that you can't find assertiveness in yourself.
You know, something interesting about that is a lot of the violence that we also see nowadays is met against women who are perceived as being empowered. There's this story that goes around that young men feel, how do I call it? Emasculated by a lady who has her accolades or her things going, right? And so maybe the violence that we're now seeing is coming from that level of emasculation that is felt, where now maybe the young men or the men feel like the only way for them to assert the particular dominance that they feel they should is through this particular violence. And it's tragic, really, but it's a sorry state of affairs at the moment.
That's true. It's a sorry state of affairs, but at the end of the day, something can be done about it, and it starts from raising a new generation into believing in equality. Because femicide is not just about women dying, it's also about men and women and young boys and young girls coming together so that we actually achieve equality. And so a lot of these harmful practices, not just against girls, but also against young boys, because boys also get
violated.
Yeah, they do. And
in silence.
And they don't feel like they have the space to talk about it. And that is also a direct consequence of the patriarchy. When you're looking at systems where if I'm a mother of a child, then I get full custody because the woman is more nurturing. So a lot of these things also work against men. And so equality at the end of the day, I think, is the answer. Thank you so much, Emmanuel, for your answer. And Grace, I just want to ask you, what are some persistent challenges Kenya is facing in addressing all forms of violence against women and girls?
Yeah, thank you, Halima. So I think one of the challenges that we are facing, and it's really influencing whatever is happening in our country, and as we say in Africa and everywhere else, that delayed is justice denied. And I think that is one of the missing links that we have been seeing going around in our country, because who are the perpetrators? Why are they not being brought into books? And because we have seen so many cases and zero arrests. And I think that is one of the challenges that we are facing. And another thing that we have, it's the backlog of cases in most of our courts. And I think SGBV sexual gender-based violence are mostly not prioritized in our courts. And for us as a project, that is why we have been working with the Court Users Committee, so that we are able to influence the prioritization of sexual gender-based violence cases, and also, that they are fast-tracked, so that whoever has come to the court to claim their justice, they are able to get it at the right time. And so that, because in most cases, the survivors, they get tired of, going to the court and narrating what happened to them over and over again. It's very traumatizing. Yeah. So in most cases, you'll find that survivors opt to not even continue with the cases. And then also we have the survivors being threatened by the perpetrators. That is also one of the challenges that we are facing in our country. And as a victim or a survivor, when you are threatened, and let's say a young girl, a 15-year-old girl, and the perpetrator is your father, what do you do in such a scenario? So that is some of the challenges that we are facing in our country in relation to violence against women.
So there's this particular one that I think we also need to look into, and it's very persistent. It's the power that social media also has in perpetuating these levels of violence that we're seeing. Is that the particular entities or personalities within the social media spaces that have I'd call it a very a very hard stance on particular issues that are related to gender. And you find that the followers religiously look at them like people who they really look up to. And these views, most of them have particular connotations that really fuel the violence that we're seeing, because you might find particular trends on social media that show connotations of actual violence, and things like this seem normal nowadays. Like, it's a trend.
And the worst thing about the algorithm?
Yes.
The algorithm promotes extremist content, and it also promotes alpha male content that is also very detrimental to women. And these are also things that people in the tech space need to be aware of, because there was a study done that young girls, when they're on Instagram, they actually have such low self-esteem because of the kind of content that they're viewing, and also what they're internalizing as to what they should be. And that's also fueled by a lot of the comments that they're getting from men. Yeah. So thank you. And Grace, also, I'd like to point out, when you said justice delayed is justice denied, that is so true. Yeah. What do you do when your father is the perpetrator? Who do you go to?
Yeah, thank you. So basically for us, what we usually do is we train the community on the sexual gender-based violence referral pathways. In case of you as a victim, what is the first place to go when you have experienced violence? And that is very critical for us, because sometimes the person that you're really entrusted to protect you is the person that violates you. And we have so many places where people can go and report. We have the chief, we have the police, but the police is just the last mile. We also have the gender desks at the police stations, where people can be able to go and report sexual and gender-based violence cases. And we have the civil societies in the communities who are really working tirelessly to ensure that the girls and even women are not violated. We have gender recovery centers that people can go and seek help in case of if you've undergone gender-based violence. And so those are some of the community structures, and we have so many hotlines where people can call and seek help. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And we've talked about programs at Amref that have a people-centered approach. So how are you empowering survivors and communities to break cycles of violence?
Yeah, the first thing I said is about the SGBV referral pathways. So basically, we are training the communities to understand what are the referral pathways in case of gender-based violence. Secondly, what we're also doing is we are promoting a positive masculinity. We've talked about culture. Culture is something that really fuels violence against women, because of the power dynamics, the norms and the values that has put women as a lower sex, or as a weaker sex. And basically, as a Christian, if you've gone through the Bible, it talks about women being, a weaker sex, and that has been reflected in our communities. The power dynamics, something that Emmanuel said, socialization starts at the household level. You see how you see your mother and your father relating. That is how you're going to grow up, and you will relate to how your mother and your father were relating. Yeah. So through approaches like the gender transformative approaches that we are using, we are able to examine and critically analyze the power dynamics that happens from the household level, at the school, at the workplace, and any other area, even at the policy level, because it is a way you relate to your colleagues that can also result to violence. We have violence at the workplace, we have violence in different areas. So that is what one of the approaches that we are using. We are training the community on gender transformative approaches so that we are able to deal with the power dynamics in all areas. Yeah, thank you.
You're very welcome. And that was a beautiful answer, because the approach that you're using permeates through all sectors, whether it's at the workplace, whether it's in schools. There are resources that are available to young women and young girls, and it's also participatory in nature because it's also inclusive towards men, so that men can actually adopt positive masculinity and break these cycles of violence, not just against women, but also negative patterns within themselves.
Yes, maybe I can also add something.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we do a lot of policy dissemination forums where we are able to break down the policy in a language that the community can be able to understand, and also know that some of these like the FGM. It's something that the Maasai community and any other community that practices it believes that it's their cultural right. So how you be able to, tell the community that, the policy is here and it prohibits female genital mutilation.
And as we are looking at female genital mutilation, FGMC, that is something that should not be done to anyone. It is devastating to see a lot of the effects that happen because you are limited when it comes to childbirth. You can lose your life and the baby's life. And additionally, it's a cultural practice. So people think that it's the norm. So how do you change those behaviors? And how do you make it so that a community can thrive and leave those harmful practices behind? That's very, very important. And that's also part of the reason I think that 16 days of activism is important, because even if some cultures do not practice FGMC, we also need to think of those cultures that do. How can we help them, or not really help them, but how can we change a mindset so that they're more receptive to behavioral changes that can positively contribute towards their livelihoods and the livelihoods of their communities. And actually, as we mark 16 days of activism, what immediate steps should stakeholders in Kenya take to accelerate progress towards ending femicide and other forms of gender-based violence?
I think one of the stakeholders that should really have a lot on their plate at the moment is our legal frameworks that exist and the law enforcers. The crimes that are reported, especially the femicide rates that are happening, we only get to see the deaths, but we never get to see the perpetrators being brought to book. And so I think if there's an intervention that needs to happen, is to actually see these particular people who are behind these deaths, and see the victims get justice, because the only way that can be a deterrent is when people see that those people who have done these crimes actually being punished for them. I think there also needs to be a lot of work, just as Grace had highlighted earlier, in terms of getting justice delivered, especially for those who have gotten the cases in court, to have that fast tracked and have this particular victims get their justice as they should. I feel like a lot of community awareness needs also to be done at cut across all communities in terms of the devastating effects of gender-based violence. There needs to be more conversations on the empowerment of our girls, and also conversations with the boys as well, for them not to feel endangered, for the lack of better word, or left behind because of the compatriots or the fellow girls being empowered. Because if they're able to get to that level of equality where everyone is able to achieve what they want to achieve without necessarily having any hang-ups, I think we'll see less violence, because there'll be no need to fight in the first place. So we need to find reasons not to fight. Yeah.
I think maybe I can add a breath there. Yeah, so I also feel what Emmanuel has said is very important, awareness. Because looking at the comments in social media when a story has been posted about femicide coming from men, it's really saddening, and even women, because there's a lot of victim blaming. It's always the victim. And we say that the dead don't tell tales. So we really don't know what transpired for someone to even end up losing their lives. But, our community and even our society, I would say that there's a lot of awareness that needs to happen, because given the comments, it feels like it's normal. We have normalized it. It's normal for someone to get killed. It's their fault. Why were they? Why were there? Sorry.
Why were they there?
Why were? Sorry.
It's okay. Just
okay. So people feel like it's their problem. It's their fault for them to experience violence. And also, we had one case of one of the femicide case where the perpetrator, actually women came out saying that, this perpetrator has been I'll say reach out to different women. So he's known. That is what he does. He reaches to women at the dating sites. They have meetups and all that. And some women even decline maybe meeting up the guy. But now this one lady, they met up, and that was the end of her life. So there are those culprits that are known. And they're very chronic. And these are the people that are supposed to be brought to book. And, they're supposed to be, taken into custody, because he has a wide range of, victims. He had a very wide population of victims. So someone like that is left scot-free. You can imagine what the damage is about to do in the community.
And it's sad. It's sad as well when those perpetrators are also in high levels of power, in government and other spaces in society where perpetually maybe even untouchable, you might say. Yeah.
And you, Grace, Emmanuel, you guys have brought up so many good points, and thank you so much for joining me on 16 days of activism, especially as we talk about femicide and ending violence against women and girls. I think both your work is impactful because it really, really helps people understand what women and young girls are going through, and also advocating for youth, and both young women and young men. And so thank you for sharing your expertise. And to all our listeners, thank you for joining this important conversation. So before we close, a heartfelt thank you to both Grace and Emmanuel for being with us today and for sharing your expertise. And to all our listeners, thank you for joining us for this important conversation. Remember, there is no excuse for violence against women and girls. If you'd like to help us reach our goal of eliminating gender-based violence in Kenya, please visit our website at amref.org or visit our social media pages at amref_Kenya, Facebook at AmrefKE, and Instagram at AmrefKenya. Let us continue to break the silence and build a future free from violence. Thank you for listening, and goodbye for now.